Yeah, all right. Yeah, okay, so good. Yeah, I'm going to get into the thing about some alphanumerics, and once again, I'm going, I'm going to try and stay completely uh, in the direction of the thing about the alphanumerics is 6, and um, the thing about the alphanumeric value and the numerical value, and the thing about the pronunciation as compared to spelling, and vice versa and all that stuff. But anyway, it seemed to be something that I've noticed, and it really originated since I've been the SSI thing, and getting several phones with like coverage with benefits from SSI. And ultimately, think about the acronym of SSI, of supplemental security income, or the superstar investment. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so like yeah, and a star is born. Yeah, all right. Yeah. So anyway, I was thinking about that because of some factors that had led to um, several different types. In the last phone that I'd gotten, um, I'm really focusing on what I was really looking for was AT&T and the Apple iPhone 14 and 15. But anyway, the coverage that was like given with AT&T involving the iPhone was either um, an Apple iPhone 7 is the one I actually originally ordered. Okay, I was sent an Apple iPhone 6s. Okay, once again. Okay, it being like silver with what gives the impression of Apple iPhone SE as software on the touchscreen. Yet doesn't function, at all like an Apple iPhone SE. And my thing about the Apple iPhone SE, as compared to what gives the appearance, what might look like Apple iPhone SE on the Apple iPhone 6s, is the only thing in my mind of where I'm kind of like at with the thing about the color of the toilet. Excuse me. And the Hio silver thing about the where the Hio silver, like stainless steel, silver toilet is in like a governmental structure, where the oldest governmental computer mainframe is called the Whopper. Yay! All right, the Whopper. Yeah. In any case, so like and ultimately, I guess a lot of computation that has led to the thought of um, Austin Powers, Bluebonnet, and Paralegal. Let's kind of think about the Bluebonnet in the way of like the State Flower, Texas, and the Paralegal being something of the Burger King thing, and the onion ring, and Norbit, a little bit of humor about that, and the Saturn Sky onion rings in orbit thing, and yeah, something I was thinking about that with some like words and lyrics with a little bit of brain work about it. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So anyway, like I was thinking about that for the mere second, an intent of the fact of that being like the Hio silver of governmental thing of color code. But in any case, yeah. So the Apple iPhone SE is kind of like and I have been really. It's just like where I'm at right now. It just seemed like the only thing that just like came left by like not necessarily a process of elimination, but not really elimination, but it covered like quite a bit that has led to like what I'd already done. It seemed to be like it just like happens to be like what's there as far as like my memory goes. Okay, but anyway, yeah. So like in that way, with the Apple iPhone SE being the 24, and I've been kind of thinking about the RF of redundant frequency, what that is even to telematics, normally involving transportation. Telematics is normally like tracking devices, and systems like OnStar is for like General Motors, involving geographic informations, even global positioning systems, based on what type of standard it is, or an option of a standard feature, or a package that would include a little bit more than beyond. Different manufacturers of automobiles normally, four wheels with like the demanded standard of like 800 RPM, and what OnStar is to like General Motors in that way, and like Ford and Audi and several other manufacturers that way involving, telematics. And based upon that categorization that way, the redundant frequency seems to be, and I was just like really thinking about it here lately, in the last like several days, because I mean, it's like, I, I had the information, but realizing the connectivity sometimes takes just time and waiting, but it seemed to be the thing, if the redundant frequency of like consumer electronics, if the real word really might not should be consumer, or the thought of a little bit beyond maybe what might be not always considered as maybe even involved that way kind of thing. But anyway, I was thinking about the alphanumeric of 24, the International International Electro-Electronic Engineering, the IEEE being 24, and the General Motors Acceptance Corporation, GMAC being 24, and the HOA, Homeowners Association, the RF of redundant frequency being 24, and the SE of the Apple iPhone, SE being 24, and what I see between the ERISA statute being the ERISA and the IRA, and really the letters remaining between the two is the SE, and what that is to representative of paper, even the transaction to bank as compared to a direct deposit, or a checking account in a way of really being a checking account. Yet sometimes just being in a bank, even with a direct deposit, I mean, I've discovered that it ultimately seems to lead ultimately to the with the phone number like the Social Security, ultimately getting to the phone number itself, based upon alphanumeric computation, only leads to the thought of like it's still equated to something about paper or a check. I mean, and it's like even having a direct deposit in the bank, it's like it's being a contesting factor of why would a person even be in the bank at this point? I mean, for real. So I mean, normally the card from the direct source, normally, and electronics that way doesn't even require going to a bank, or the thought of like going beyond banking and investment firms in a way, something beyond the thought of like even the need to go to the bank. Well, ultimately, it's getting to that point anyway. So the thought of that is like a lot of things I've been looking at and thinking about. But anyway, the thing about the redundant frequency and my thought of like that being used as even a network within itself or a grid, and I never really thought of it that way. I mean, being involved in certain factors and talking to certain people about electronics and being assembling electronic circuit boards, and just talking to people at different locations and their capacity as far as like description of like what type of production and service and prototype, or mass production in that way of like printed circuit boards, and telematics was like part of some of the conversations with some of the people I spoke with at different electronic manufacturing, to the way if even schematic factors that have the connectivity between telematics and the way of electronic printed circuit boards, and now it's kind of like because I had been referred to and involving wireless testing of telematics, and I was like talking to an executive, and his not in his office, on the phone, of an electronics in the Sugar Land area, and he started talking about electronics in the way of telematics, of testing wireless stuff, and like we were like really talking into it, and it's like what we had talked about, I mean, doesn't even seem to be in any kind of way what my thought is now about telematics and the RF, about the wireless thing about it. And I had gotten a book about telematics that normally focus the direction and content of like manufacturers using tracking systems with their own name brand, with their own automobiles that way, and like Osiris did like General Motors. So in any case, I'm just now kind of like thinking about the redundant frequency that way as a grid, or what that even is to a degree level. And I mean, if it only represents intellectual of an identifying signal, that's like maybe where it should be, like in a jet or a helicopter. Yeah, for real, So like so like I gotta get like like the one of the Hill HX50, you know, three propeller, you know, rotor thing about it. Yeah, that's like a real nice one. Yeah, I'd like to have that for real. And the blue, yeah, all right, yeah. So anyway, like I was thinking about that RF and some of the information that I talked to like several people involved in electronics, and telematics was like one of the deals. So like I was starting to get into it and like going that direction with like directing my time, like reading and studying it a little bit. But anyway, but now it's just kind of like the redundant frequency and the wireless thing about the conversation was like, God, 6, 7 years ago, maybe a little bit long, maybe even 10 years. But anyway, it's like, it's just now kind of like, you got to be kidding me, because all the information that we were talking about, telematics, um, was referred to like an electronic printed circuit board, not necessarily a network or a grid for telematics that way, of like a tracking system of like automobile distribution, that way being an identifier, even at a degree level of intellectual, yeah, of like international law having fair use, yeah. As an easement of like royalties. I mean, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah, all right. I got the surface thing going on, right? So you like, it's like really not funny in a way, but yeah, it's kind of like not funny at all. But yeah, so it's kind of like a thinking about the surface being about the redundant frequency, or like an identifier of what degree level is, or you know what only opportunity might only seem what seems to be the deal about having fair use of access easements, and what that is to even like the value and content during the duration of lifespan of normally intellectual property, resulting in the word royalties normally as separate to maybe you know the real deal about the annuity in that way, or you know other factors that might even be the practical application of like registered charity or even trust funds, or you know what that is really. I'm not real sure about the inheritance thing, although it seems to be the difference between a trust fund and certain factors of practical application in between like an inheritance as compared to a trust fund. I mean, even the cemetery of a funeral, I mean, all the deal about the practical application and principles, reading all that for like a burial, it's like, so like practical application of integration of like trust funds even. I mean, it's like looking at that. I was reading it like when my father passed away, even my mother, but I wasn't really thinking about it or had a need to even really even be concerned with that part about it. But I went over it and I was like there participating with some of the deals about you know the final expenses of like the burial. And I was thinking about it, and it's kind of like I was reading some stuff on some trust funds, and it seemed to me like the thing about the um, memorial issue of like the surface being like almost like the redundant frequency, like internet protocol, or dictating what a boycott and embargo would only mean of like you know even making it beyond you know internet protocol, or what commerce dictates what's on or offshore. I mean, real. And I was kind of like thinking about that. It's kind of like, you got to be kidding me, you know. And ultimately, it got to the deal about the pi r squared and the isometrics, you know, of a circle, and anything above the surface representing isometrics in 3-dimensional being the volume. And it seemed to be, you know, the big deal that really seems to be the factor of like going beyond a local area network or a local bank in the way of like isometrics, and getting into you know beyond a practical application, ultimately resulting beyond before even getting to the Social Security office, already knowing the fact that ultimately retiring resulting in a Social Security issue, as compared to separate benefits of SSI being supplemental security income, and the acronym, yeah, all right, thank God, yeah. So anyway, in a way that is kind of like you know, thinking about something about the memorial as compared to maybe what the RF might only represent, as not accomplish what would be termed as like human capital. And you know, there's like a real big deal that I've been talking about the human capital, and the human civil rights of like Geneva, Switzerland. Similarly, to be the deal like you know I mentioned a little bit earlier about the "There's Only One Way to Rock" a song by Sammy Hagar. It's 8:05. It's time to rock, and you know on the clock, on a 12-hour clock, 8:05 is like a focus that I've really been focusing on. I mean, I heard that song and used to practice it. I mean, all the time on my drums, and you know, singing all the time in the car. The thing with this is that it got to the point, you know, that was really before the Secretary of Treasury Robert E. Rubin had been, you know, United States Secretary of Treasury Robert E. Rubin, and all my practical application of alphanumerics and linguistics and all that stuff. And, my thing about that Robert E. Rubin and the pronunciation being E. Rubin being 69, like Texas and Mexico and Jehovah, and the equator factor below the equator, and information of the history of the U.S. dollar, in the book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, going below the equator in the South American thing about it. But anyway, yeah, so it's like Sammy Hagar says that song, it's 8:05, it's time to rock. And, like the Houston area, at the time, KLOL, 101.1 FM radio was like a rock radio station, and 97 rock likewise was the deal. And the thing about going to the circuit seemed to be like, these Stargate, program experience about something about the Abraham Lincoln in that way, about the rectangle of night vision on a Lincoln Continental in the 1992 map with the horizontal rectangles identifying restricted areas with red rectangles that way. And what the hood ornament is on a Lincoln Continental as compared to the night vision thing about that. Ultimately getting to, the Abraham Lincoln thing and pronunciation of Abraham. And, the VIX Formula 44 thing about, the pronunciation and syllable of Abraham itself being like a V-twin thing. And it goes on and on and on. In any case, so it seems to be like the rectangle ultimately getting to the high rise. And what wide world of sports is and wide area network is to a rectangle as compared to a vertical rectangle that would even be the thought of, pillars of like, designs of structure and architecture, or the thing about the vertical rectangle, or Stonehenge that way, in that way, and what the vertical rectangle is to like, Abraham Lincoln, or the 90-degree being, ultimately getting to a symmetrical asymmetrical value of like 180 degrees in telepathic answer, and what the deal is about the pi r squared presenting that flat plane surface of like two 90-degree right angles, okay? Anyway, yeah, so like it gets to the pi r squared to the symmetric of like that alone, okay? But the thing of it is that something about the Bureau of Printing and Engraving going to, the circuit, it ultimately being an issue like memory. And memory minus de facto being like 35, and it's say capital Austin and all that stuff, and some of the information I refer to. But like the song, like there's only one way to rock, with that, and then it's 8:05. It's time to rock with that song. It's kind of like looking at it and getting to the alphanumerics of 247 is like the 109 Los Angeles governor's president. 109 is 110, equating to 247. And, I'd focus on, one of the biggest shipments. If it still stands true today, like back in the 80s in the Port of Houston, Geoprism, Chevrolet Geoprism, and Hyundai Excel were the two. I mean, like made world, national, and local news. It's like the biggest shipment in the Port of Houston. Well, anyway, automatically, when I was really first starting in June of 1992 to really get in and stay with studying, alphanumeric. I mean, Geoprism is automatically a 109 thing, okay? Something about, my first and last name. But anyway, 109 being like governor and written, the word written, and Los Angeles that way, had led to, when I got to the point about the M is in, and 13 is 14, 14 is 13, and N is M, and that forward, backward, reverse, and, all that stuff about intelligence and opposite and all that stuff. Well, anyway, I got into actually studying a combination of two numerical, alphanumeric value with the IS being the is being 28, okay? And I started like analytically like using that, and it ultimately led to the alphanumerics of 55, and even the thought of a homepage of like MSN and the I thing. Even the note is legal tender for all debt, or the debit and the I thing that way of like that I thing, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like I was thinking about that because of factors of the rock and the horizontal and the wide world of sports and the wide area network as compared to the Lincoln Continental, vertical rectangle that way. Like it seemed to be now, since the Abraham Lincoln thing, the Lincoln Continental deal about it, and the kernel and the kennel, and what the kennel is to the next of kin, and the kinetic world. It seems to be information like once again with national security, when anyone hears it, it's very rare that national security will even associate the information like the psychic war, America's foremost psychic spy, and the cover-up of the CIA's top secret Stargate program. And ultimately it gets to, that. And normally, even when national security even refers to telepathic communication, during that time, you know, whether it's on the same channel or not, or the same. I haven't seen anything like it on the same channel at the same time, but during that time on different channels, like involving what would suggest telepathic communication, and normally suggesting telekinetic thing and a pin rolling on the table. And ultimately, it gets to the thing about it rolling that way, and what telekinetics is to Lincoln, or the next of kin, or telekinetics, or Tel Aviv in Israel, and I mean, all that stuff about representing in God we trust. It seems that the telekinetic of the pen roll and paper mate, or chase ink, at the time, chase ink wasn't even, the thing about the card, that being made is available information. But the thing about the paper mate is like the 5610 and the two vertical hearts that way. When it's read, although the pen is horizontal when you read it from left to right, paper mate with two vertical hearts in between the two, okay? And the thing about something I was thinking about is that, like LASIK's, LASIK's laser corrective eye surgery, okay? The thing about LASIK, when it's like LA being like 12 and 1 being 13, and the pronunciation being spelled as the alphanumeric value of like 6 being 52, getting to 65. And ultimately, it gets to like 1965, getting to the Austin Powers thing, the Blue Bonnet State Flower, Texas being Blue Bonnet. And I can't believe it's butter, and the Imperial Eagle that way of like the HTTP:// and once again. In any case, yeah, so like, it's already getting late, I'm already feeling that way already. But anyway, yeah, so, anyways, I want to do this because I think I might take another long break. But anyway, the thing with this is that, the HTTP:// and the thing about LASIK, and the year 1965 seems to be the significance of like right now, and in the memory of like this being like here and not even realizing it, and then being moved like in the Houston area until like a 1969 moving back to Pearland with my parents, obviously, to Pearland, and like I had no idea that this home was actually like here. I didn't have a memory of it all until like standing in the window, and the plastic pastel bowl, a predominant color of the pastel seemed to be the big deal in the early 60s, which is like 1964, like my birth year. It's like even architecture and color, even world history in the way of like a pastel green representing like a province in world history. It was like the color during education as a province, and the pastel green. But anyway, yeah, so what that is, the world class and J.D. Powers. Yeah, so I mean, it seems to be like really that it seems to be like J.D. is ultimately likewise, in addition to 6 thing, based upon, I mean, if it's going to be J10 and D4, I mean, it's like 6 as well. And some of the focus I've been focused on between, from Theodore Roosevelt to Franklin Roosevelt being 6 presidential terms, and the thing about the World Trade Center 9/11, when I found out it was like information, how true it is, or limited to, and or including, whatever the case is, 2001 at the Gatesville, like the Hughes thing about it. And ultimately getting to a difference of like, 9/11 being the emergency call, 1995 to like 2001 being a difference of 6, or between ABC 13 News Houston and ABC 7 Los Angeles being a difference of 6, and considerable amount more, and to think about that in that way, and ultimately it seems to be that involving the duration between Roosevelt being the New Deal Act, it would been a focus that I've been concentrating on, just specifically alphanumerics and the involvement of the FDIC that way, of the Roosevelt New Deal Act, as compared to Robert E. Rubin, the 2 presidents of Roosevelt, Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt. And the thing about the United States Secretary of Treasury, Robert E. Rubin, I mean, ultimately, knowing a little bit about and following and reading, Robert E. Rubin, and the information in Wall Street, about Robert E. Rubin being involved with like a Citigroup. I think he may have, I'm not real sure. I'm persuaded to think that he had something to do with the New York Federal Reserve Bank as well. But Robert E. Rubin had like ultimately a very strong profile in the way of like even involved with like a Citigroup as I think as a corporate executive officer. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, General Motors, I think, as well. If it's like Detroit, I'm not real sure, but I think it's like really like reading quite a bit about the Robert E. Rubin because I mean he's like on television so much. Um, I mean, how could I ignore it, really? I mean, plus I was like going with all the African Americans and all that. Ultimately, the tribe of Reuben, biblically, one of the 12 tribes of Israel, 12,000 each of the 12 totaling 145,000. Anyway, like, the tribe of Reuben being involved with the scribes and everything that seems to be like so involved, like even LiveScribe, or what ultimately gets to the invisible programming, um, of invisible programming, and how true, to what extent, if HTTP colon double forward slash is even the thing about it or not, involving LightScribe. I would assume that LightScribe would only present, um, practical application of principle. I haven't gone real far beyond LightScribe. Um, not I don't want to say the word limited because when I find the time and direction, getting into the LightScribe and invisible programming, um, that I'm almost for certain will go beyond LightScribe itself, but or biometrics that way. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So like I was like really kind of like following the information, uh, with Robert E. Rubin for quite some time. But anyway, yeah. So it's like already going like on 26 minutes and like close to 30 seconds now. And I was going to do that. I'm going to take a break, okay? But anyway, yeah. So I'm probably going to have to like do it all over again. Yeah. All right.